And thanks, Lydia, for filming, and for all the other people here, and for all of you guys for coming, and for all the HR people who are here on Saturday, and to you for being like the boss.
I know what it is, just by feeling it. It's a plate. I can tell it's one of the plates saying, okay. I can tell.
So exciting.
It is exciting because I really want to win one of these.
Well, you got your own.
Oh, look at that.
Yay.
Thank you, Joya.
Oh, thank you. As you guys all know, Tracy goes so above and beyond. Amazing. So.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I appreciate
you're welcome
it.
a lot. So enjoy, you guys.
Yes.
Have fun.
You too.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tracy, if you all don't know me. And this is actually the third class that we've done this year. We started with the roasting vegetables class, and we've done the first sauce class, and I had so many healthy sauces that I said I got to do 2 classes on it. And the whole point of this is to try and give you guys extra things that you can do to your vegetables, and by the time you get to phase 2, your proteins, to make it so that chicken and pork and shrimp and broccoli don't taste the same every time you do it, and that you get tired of the same thing all the time. So if we can come up with dips and sauces, toppings, things that you can use, it will keep you more interested. And it works real well as a prep for you, because not that you have to make all the things that are in here on a given week, that everything that's in there holds for a week, 10 days or better. So if you make them, make 2 or 3 or 1 in a given week, then you know that during the week you've got stuff ready to go that you can do with. And if you've got a couple of different sauces, then it'll help change things up during the week, and you don't get so bored with your food. And I will say, as we do this, I will tell you, because we didn't mark it on the recipes, but most of the recipes here are phase 1 appropriate. There's a couple of them that are only phase 2, but those of you who aren't there yet will get there. So you'll be glad to have them when the time comes. The first thing that I'm going to make for you here is a no butter, no oil garlic herb spread. It would be something you could put on bread. You can put it on your corn on the cob, put it on your broccoli, put it on pasta, put it on spaghetti squash. Think about it as what you would have done when you're trying to make bread and you're now going, I can't, what am I going to use instead of? Now, is it going to taste exactly like butter and garlic? Well, of course not. I mean, it's not butter. But if you look in here as to where on the front page here, the first recipe, I give you the comparison nutritional value. If you had used Trader Joe's garlic herb butter, or if you had used Land O'Lakes garlic herb spread, what the calories and fat would be for a 2 tablespoon portion of that compared to what this is going to be. So it's just a question of being able to learn to change up your taste buds. And I have everything here already prepped for this, so hopefully make it easier in doing this. The first item I want to talk to you guys about that's in here is something that's called aquafaba. And what it is the liquid that comes off of a can of typically chickpeas, garbanzo beans, or you could get it off of any white bean, a Great Northern bean, a navy bean, a cannellini bean. And the vegans were the ones who came up with being able to use this item in its own food source. So, I mean, when you take a can of those beans, dump them out, but, you know, when you put them in your colander, make sure you've got something under there to catch this stuff, because it works as a wonderful replacement for oil. Does it taste exactly like oil? No. But it gives you the viscosity, a little more thickness to it than what a chicken broth or a water would be. So the first thing thing that's going in here is just chickpea broth. I mean, it's straight out of the can. Then the next item I'm going to tell you about here is nutritional yeast. And I know we talked about this. This will be a backup for people that were here before. But again, something that vegetarians, vegans use, but it should become an important part for anybody that is going to a more plant-based kind of diet. It is a replacement. It's not an activated yeast. It is not something, it's inactive, so it can't like leaven your bread or make things like that happen. But it is used as a seasoning, and it kind of has, it looks like fish food in here. It does look like fish food, but it kind of is reminiscent, the flavors in it, of what a Parmesan cheese would be. And again, the vegans were trying to find something they could use to replace that very item. One of the things that's great about it, in different recipes that I have this in, it also works as a thickener, because the longer it sits, it will absorb some of the liquid and help thicken things up. Again, giving you the viscosity in some dressings and things that I have that you wouldn't get without having typically oil in there. So again, these items are just going straight in. What have I got here? Lemon juice, lemon peel, the zest off of the lemon, just zested it. And then a bunch of different herbs here. There's fresh parsley, and then as you read through, white pepper and chives and onion powder, dried oregano, and it literally is open the stuff up, measure it out, and then just run it. If you can really shake it hard enough, you can do it that way. If you've got a food processor or even a bullet blender, what you might do your shakes in, something like that, it's just going to do it quicker for you and just get more consolidated for you. The reason I'm doing this on the front end, is because the longer that this sits, the thicker it'll get from the nutritional yeast. So right now it is a finished blend here. And I made it first so that by the time you all get to it at the end, you'll be able to taste it and see how much better it is. Again, you can spread it on bread, spread it on your corn on the cob, drizzle it over broccoli, over a piece of chicken, drizzle it over shrimp. I mean, whatever you can think to do that you would have used garlic butter on previously. And that's it. I mean, that literally is making it. Really simple. Yes, ma'am?
Does that need to be refrigerated?
After it's made, yes. Well, it doesn't need to be refrigerated right now, per se, but yes, in the long run of things, if you made it and you didn't use it all in one day, yes, you can store it in the refrigerator.
Okay, and will it separate when it does?
No, it will not separate in there, and if it does at all, just take a whisk and whisk it up before you go to use it again. Nutritional yeast. You can buy this at any health food store. You can buy it at Kroger's carrying it these days. I have been, my particular Kroger, they have it in the baked goods section, which I think is very strange because it's next to the activated yeast. Now they have their own these days, Simple Truth organic nutritional yeast that's over in the organic section if you still have a Kroger with a separate organic section. Whole Foods carries it. Fresh Thyme had it till they don't anymore. Lucky's, Trader Joe's has their own version of it, and some of the places like Rainbow Blossom and Lucky's that have the bulk bins will have it in their bulk bin section. But make sure that you get the flake one versus one that is more granulated. The granulated one doesn't expand and give you the thickening power that you typically want to have be part of why you're using this.
Amazon has it too.
The flake, do get the flake version. And you're welcome at the end of this to come up here and try it yourself. That's, just so you have an idea of what it tastes like. Yes, ma'am.
How long does it last in the fridge?
This and that or this?
This one.
That, couple weeks. Absolutely, will last a couple of weeks. Yes, ma'am.
When does the garlic come in?
Oh, sorry. Now that she says that. It should have just gone in there too. Oops. It's just one of those days.
What do you call that herb?
Well, yeah, that's herb butter now versus garlic herb butter. It literally has been one of those days. Now, the thing with garlic, I find it is real easy in life to over garlic on things. And when something says a clove of garlic or whatever, what size clove of garlic are you using? And they're all different sizes in there. This is going to be a taste and judge, and the first time you make this, you may find that I would start with a smaller amount always. Put it in, taste it, and then add more if you need it, or feel like you need it. I just used like 2.5, what would be cloves of garlic in here, because a couple of them were big. So, thank you for. Now, let's try this again.
So the longer it sits, the thicker it gets?
It will get thicker because of the nutritional yeast. That will help thicken it. Now, it's not ever per se going to get exactly as thick as butter is in its firm stage, but think of it if you had melted butter and you were going to spread that over, because it's spread that way and you melted it and you were going to use a brush to spread it over. All right. Yes.
Did you cook with that as far as,
Like in a pan? I've never tried to.
or like put it over salmon or
Sure.
over something when you're cooking it?
I would think so, yes. Again, I have not tried personally doing that. I would think go ahead and try and just watch it and see what it does.
Tracy,
Yes.
can you freeze it?
Can you freeze it? Again, I've never tried it. I've just used it enough out of the refrigerator. Again, try it. There's not anything in there that shouldn't be able to freeze or that should separate on you. The yeast shouldn't and the aquafaba shouldn't, the chickpea liquid, the brine. So again, try it and just see what happens.
Is there any salt in the spices that you did?
No, I don't think I did. No, it was white pepper, parsley, chives, onion powder, oregano, lemon zest. So there was no added salt to that. Okay? Next recipe. I have for you guys here a no cook, no oil, fresh tomato sauce. Perfect for this time of year, and one of the reasons I wanted to do it was because of this time of the year. This literally is tomatoes that I have peeled. I have peeled and de-seeded, and I'm going to show you how to peel and de-seed a tomato here as soon as this water comes back up to a boil. So I'm going to go ahead with the recipe while I'm waiting for that to come up. In this recipe, you do not have to peel or de-seed your tomatoes at all. You could choose to do one or the other or none. That's up to you and the way you like it. But I went ahead and peeled and de-seeded them and then just chopped them up, diced them. Now, I used to make this at home all the time, and I would just take it in a bowl and put my tomatoes in And then I would take a bottle of olive oil and just spread that over the top. And then I would put some garlic in there and then start putting other stuff that I might like in as a pasta topping for myself. And you'll see in that recipe at the bottom, I'm just doing the basic version today, but you can add onions, artichoke hearts, you could add some little mozzarella balls if you want, you could add bell peppers, you could add chopped up zucchini, you could add Kalamata olives. I mean, if you can think of it, just about, you could add it to this, whatever is kind of Italianish that you like. So this now, I'm doing it with no oil. So all I have here then is some garlic and balsamic vinegar that I'm mixing in with this. And then fresh basil, which I did not cut yet, because if you cut basil too soon, it does not like a knife. It truly doesn't. It turns black on you if you go too long with it. So using this fresh like this, I wanted to just wait and do it when I got here and toss it in, so that it wouldn't have, I mean, if I'd done this last night, I was afraid it would be black by the time I got here with it. You can tear it with your own hands and and then you end up with that smell if you like it on your fingers, which, you know, always is nice, if you like it. And that's literally all that I'm doing in here. I can add some salt and pepper. Kosher salt would be what I would recommend always to people, not iodized Morton salt. Reason being, for one thing, kosher salt is a bigger grain. It's harder to oversalt. If you took a teaspoon of, or a quarter teaspoon of kosher salt, and what that space fills up in that quarter teaspoon versus a teaspoon of iodized salt, you're actually getting less salt in your food. I'm not even going to do it in here. But you use some fresh pepper in here, put some salt in if you want it, if you're, you know, if you don't have an issue with your salt in your diet. And then toss this together and just let it sit for about 30 minutes, and then add it to either hot pasta over the top of zucchini noodles, zoodles. It could be a topping on top of fish or chicken, over spaghetti squash, anything that you want to do like that. And it's great this time of the year, because the longer it's going to sit there at room temperature, the juices are going to ooze out of the tomato, anything you've got in there. And if you toss it with something then that is hot, it will kind of warm it up and bring the flavors out to it. And it makes it great for like in the summertime with fresh, you know, good fresh tomatoes, and not something that's going to kill your kitchen and heat it up too much. Yes, ma'am.
Can you put Mrs. Dash in there?
Sure. You put whatever you want in it. Season it however you want. If you want oregano instead of basil in there, if you want to put tarragon, if you like, as I say, there's a whole list of things here that I just give you as suggestions, but let your mind go crazy. Anybody? Okay. I have a boiling pot of water here. All I have done to peel and de-seed a tomato, I took this tomato and put in the bottom of it a little X. You just score it with a little X. You don't dig down in there deep, but just score it with a little X and drop it in boiling water. You let it sit in there 30 seconds, a minute, kind of depends on the tomato. If it's a store-bought tomato, it might take a little longer for the skin to want to peel off of it. If it's a fresh tomato from your garden, it'll go quicker. But you literally will be able to see where you had your X, the skin starts to split on it.
And then just peel completely out?
Pardon?
And just peel completely out?
Well, it won't come off in the water. I'll show you. I have over here as well a pan of, or a pot or bowl here of ice water, because you're not trying to cook the tomato here at all. All you're trying to do is get it so that the skin will split on it. And this was a hothouse tomato, so it's going to take another second for it to do.
How long does it take?
Pardon?
How long?
30 seconds, a minute. And as I say, with hothouse tomatoes, they tend to take a little longer. And but you'll see the skin want to split on it. Part of what went into there, I used balsamic vinegar, but you could have used sherry vinegar. And I'll tell you about that in a minute here.
What about rice vinegar?
Rice vinegar is, it's got such a low acidic level to it, and not as much flavor as some of the other vinegars, that when you aren't using as many flavorful things to it, when what I mean by that is you're not using the extra oils and fats and all. I try to use vinegars that have, in something like that, particularly where you're not cooking it, where you're using something that's got more flavor to it. So you could have used red wine vinegar. I used balsamic. Sherry vinegar is literally something that's from Spain. It's a Spanish vinegar made from cherries instead of it being made from grapes that are, a red grape that they make balsamic with, or the red wine vinegar. They use the grapes that are made sherry out of in Spain. And it just has a little bit of a different flavor, and I brought it in so that you can see it. Now, this is not sherry cooking wine. Do not buy sherry cooking wine in the store, because it is nothing but salt and flavored to be like sherry. It is not the real stuff, and loaded with salt. This is true sherry vinegar. And let me tell you, you cannot buy it at Kroger. It's hard to find. I have to go to Lots of Pasta to get it around town, or Whole Foods. Those are about the only places that I can find it. But I use it in all kind of different recipes. And again, at the end, you're welcome to come and try it and look at it and taste it. But anyway, so then I put this tomato in ice water here to cool it off. Because again, you're not trying to cook the tomato. All you want to do is be able to peel it. And I use a knife, and it literally, you can pull the skin off. Just literally comes off. Now, de-seeding a tomato. If you've chosen to peel it, great, you're ready to go. If you didn't want to peel it, that's fine. You still would do the same thing. You want to cut around your tomato from top and bottom, stem end, other end. You want to go around its middle. And the reason is because if you go around the middle, when you open it up, you see all the little pockets that are in the tomato. And then you just literally stick your finger in there and pull the little seeds out. Depending on the tomato, it'll have more little pockets. Some varieties have more or less than. And the reason that I'm doing it over a bowl used to be when my mother taught me to peel and de-seed a tomato, we used to just do it over the sink. And it wasn't until I went to culinary school that it was brought to my attention that that's really good stuff in there that you're throwing away down the sink. And so, if you will keep it, now you don't have to always keep it. If you're just going to be chopping it up to go into something, or whatever you're trying to do, you don't have to. But where I used it and kept it here today for us, and you don't have to get every little seed, but I just took the seeds out of it. And now it would be ready to dice and go into. And I kept all the seeds, or a bunch of, I didn't keep it all, the seeds and juice, so I could show you guys. After I had done it, I took those, stuff that was left in here, and I just poured it through a little sieve. And so it caught the seeds and everything, so I ended up with just tomato juice. That is drinkable tomato juice. That's no different than if you had roasted mushrooms, and I told you back when, keep the juice that comes off the mushrooms. That's like having mushroom stock. This is fresh tomato juice. You could drink it, but you also, if later on, if this is sat and it is not enough liquid for you, here's what you can use to pour into that to give it more liquid with whatever you're mixing it with. So that's just a little trick to be able to not waste something that you've got.
And it has vitamins too.
Pardon?
It has vitamins. in it.
Absolutely. So there's a trick for you.
Approximately how many tomatoes, average size, or equals this 4 cups chopped?
I used about 4, but they were pretty good sized tomatoes. It's just 4 or 5, depends on the tomato.
Tracy,
Yes.
when you take some juices like that and some of the others and you freeze them, you can put them like in an ice cube tray?
Oh, absolutely. You can
How
keep this.
long can you keep those in your fridge?
If you do it in an ice cube tray and then you take, after it's frozen, take it out of the tray, put it in a bag, plastic Ziploc bag. Most people would tell you 3 to 6 months you should use it, unless you are able to vacuum seal it, because otherwise it's going to start to get freezer burn on it. But most people end up keeping that stuff for a year or better. But I will tell you that is exactly why at my house I keep stickers, and I label and date everything. I do not put it in my freezer unless I label what it is and date it, so that I know how long has it been in there. And that's just, you can buy these stickers at the grocery store, in the aisle where the pens and paper are. And I just use the little individual ones. Heck, I've got them on all these recipes so that I knew right away what was on here. And we learned that, again, that's one of the first things you learn in culinary school. If I make something and meal prep it and put it in my refrigerator, I date it. That way you're not going in your refrigerator later on and going, how long has this sauce been sitting in here and stuck in the back of my refrigerator? So again, just a trick of the trade. All right. Next recipe. This is going to kind of play off what we just made here. It's too much trouble to have back there. I made a lemon sherry caper vinaigrette. And this is one I'm not going to make here because it's nothing more than taking the ingredients in a bowl and whisking them up. So there was no reason to waste time doing that, so I already have it fresh made. That way we can do more stuff in here, so I didn't have to do it ahead. But this is literally lemon juice, the sherry vinegar. I use chicken broth in here. Then it's called for originally extra virgin olive oil. I used a tablespoon of the aquafaba, the chickpea brine in here instead, capers and sugar-free maple syrup, and Dijon mustard. This, at that point, will hold in your refrigerator for several weeks. It is great on top of vegetables that you have cooked, and typically, if you will take it and take your hot vegetable when it comes out of either the oven, or if you've steamed it, or microwaved it, or boiled it, whatever you've done, and add some of this to the hot right away and kind of toss it some. And then I like to serve it. I take some and put it in a little pour pitcher thing I've got, and stick it in the microwave for 30 seconds and warm it up and serve it on the table as well to drizzle over. But again, it's just a real simple, easy sauce that could be over, I like vegetables is where I originally made it for when I was in phase 1 of this program, because I was tired of eating stuff that didn't have anything else but Mrs. Dash on it, you know, and so I came up with this. And as you can see, it's, I mean, down here, if you use the aquafaba and sugar-free maple syrup, it's 7 calories for 2 tablespoons. If you happen to go and decide you're going to use extra virgin olive oil and regular maple syrup, the way it originally kind of was, the recipe I played it off of was 43 calories for 2 tablespoons, which was not bad to begin with. But I kept bringing it down by making adjustments to the recipe and making it fit into our box.
Is there a difference between lemon juice that you can get in a bottle and fresh lemon?
Sure, absolutely there is. That's like, yes, it's like
If I don't
buying.
have a- If I don't have a fresh lemon,
Well, if you don't have a fresh lemon, then I always recommend don't buy that thing that looks like a lemon. That real lemon stuff, because that has got a whole bunch of preservatives and weird stuff added to it. At least go into the frozen section where the berries are, typically, and you can buy Minute Maid makes a frozen real lemon juice that is straight. I mean, it's been literally squeezed out, it's frozen, and you just take it, stick it in your freezer, well, you can keep it in the freezer, but put it in your refrigerator, and in like 24 hours it's thawed. And once you open it up, it's good for several weeks, and I've actually kept it for several months, and it works just fine. You know, you taste it and you go, it's just fine. Give it a good shake, and it is a backup to have, but there's nothing like having fresh. And I, you know, will do fresh lemons all the time, and whatever I have left over that didn't need to be used, I have a little, typically, I have a little jar, one of my little spice jars that I keep, and I pour it in there. And I have a little label just says lemon juice on it, and I keep it in my refrigerator. So I always seem to have some sitting around. So that is the lemon sherry caper sauce. Real simple. Phase 1, by the way, and let me go because I forgot to say. The first recipe we did is phase 1 appropriate. The second one we did, the tomatoes, phase 1 appropriate. That recipe, the sherry caper lemon, phase 1 appropriate. So absolutely can be eaten in phase 1.
Question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Papers taste salty. They're stored in brine.
It is. It's stored in a saltwater brine. Well, there's 2 ways you can actually buy capers. You can buy them in a brine, and if you like the saltiness of them, don't rinse them. If you don't like the saltiness of them, then rinse them. Just take them and put them in a colander and rinse them off like you would beans or anything else, and that will help take some of that off. For me, instead of adding extra salt to things, because I like salt, I just use it straight out and don't typically rinse them. But yes, and the other way you can actually buy capers is in salt. There are capers that come actually packed in salt to be kept that way. Because, you know, salt is a preservative in general, so you can buy them both ways. But most of the time you find them, I actually have a caper jar over here in case, this is just one I buy at Trader Joe's, but you can buy them Kroger, anywhere, just a jar of them. I keep empty jars around because, like, I can use this jar to shake up cornstarch and water and make a slurry or something that I'm going to use, or arrowroot and water, or chicken stock or whatever to thicken stuff. So I always have jars sitting around my house. I'm sure you all do too. I'm not unique in that, I am sure. All right, the next recipe that we are going to do here. Here I go, moving stuff. This is a tomatillo salsa verde. And you can find salsa verdes in the grocery store that are ready-made. They typically, you can see them, they might be hot flavored. Most of them tend to be mild to medium. It just depends on the amount of chilies that they have put into them. And it's a Mexican sauce, and it literally means green sauce, salsa verde. green sauce, instead of a red sauce. And it's used in everything from burritos and enchiladas and toppings. It's used to dip chips in, any number of things. They will drizzle salsa verde over. Well, usually, oftentimes, it'll have oil in it, but I came up with one that did not have oil. And you can also find it cooked and not cooked. I make a salsa verde that is not cooked, where I use these tomatillos I'm going to talk to you about, and I mix them. I don't cook them, use them raw, straight into a blender with a lot of the same other ingredients that are going to be in this one, and then add an avocado to it. And you end up with this really creamy sauce that is great as a dressing, or again, could be drizzled over any number of food items. But this one, I wanted to go ahead and cook the tomatillos. Now, what they are, it literally means, tomatillo just means little tomato, but they aren't tomatoes at all. You see them in the stores, and they are this thing that's in this papery husk here. And the husk is not edible. Should you eat it, or your dog eat it, or your grandchild eat it, nobody's going to get sick from it. But they aren't chewable, edible. They don't digest real well. And when you find them, they can be different sizes. And they talk about the fact that the smaller they are, the sweeter they will be. The larger they are, the more acidic they get. They tend to be a fairly acidic item. And when you find them, you want to get the ones, if you can, that where the husk is really sticking to the tomatillo. When you take it off, the husk off, and it just peels off, it is sticky on the inside, which is what's holding that husk on there. And when you take that husk off, just run it under warm water, and that stickiness goes away right away, not a problem.
What makes it sticky?
It's just the way they grow. They're inside the husk. They grow with this stickiness. If the husk is open more and you feel it and it's not so sticky, it's older. It's been sitting there longer, and that stickiness has gone away. The husk is not being held to it so closely. It's almost like if you had a bell pepper and the skin starts to shrivel on it. It's that same kind of thing. Depending on what you're using it for, you still can use it. I mean, I've used those shriveled up looking peppers, but usually at that point I'm doing it in something that's going to be cooked versus putting it in something that's going to be a salad fresh, or sticking them out for a crudité platter, or for a vegetable platter or something. But just to give you a little lesson there, they're Mexican, straight out Mexican product, origin from there, and they are considered to be a fruit because they do have seeds inside of them that are completely edible. You don't have to do anything to these. Now, there are several ways that you can cook them. One is to roast them, which is what I did. I just simply took a sheet pan, put foil on it, took the tomatillos, cut them in half, and laid it, I mean, they're just nothing to them on the inside, and just laid them down on the sheet pan. And then I put them in under the broiler, and it was about 7-8 minutes. Let them get colored on the top and get some, browning to them. What do they taste like? Well, you can come up here and taste one, and you'll be able to taste the sauce at the end, so you'll know. It's kind of, they just taste like themselves. They have a slightly, they're not exactly like a tomato, but kind of like a tomato, and more acidic, not so sweet as a tomato. But I took them and roasted them. Now, you can also boil them to cook them. You can pan saute them in a dry pan and do it straight on the stove. For me, I just found it real easy to do them in the oven. And at the same time, I went ahead and put garlic cloves on the sheet pan that I kept in the skin, and I kept my jalapeno and put those on the same sheet pan, and I just roasted the whole thing together, trying to get as much flavor as I could. You don't have to use a bunch of garlic at all. You don't have to roast it. You don't have to roast your jalapenos. You don't have to do any of that. I was just looking to build more flavor into what I was doing. So literally, here's what one of the tomatillos looks like when it came out, where it had roasted and gotten some color to it. And I'm literally, at this point now, going to just put them in this blender. And as I say, I had roasted a couple of jalapenos, and then I made sure, wearing gloves, that I opened them up and I took the seeds out and I took the membranes out of them so that we're getting the flavor more from the outside and not as much of the heat from the inside. And when you roast them as well, it tends to help temper down the heat a little bit as well. So I am going to throw, I did 2 of them, but I'm just going to throw 1 in here with this amount. And then, as I say, I roasted the garlic on the pan. Now, what you need to add to your recipe that it does not say and should, and it's my fault it didn't say, is after you roast the garlic, if you do that, make sure and take the skin off of it before you go throwing it into your blender. And that didn't say that to do that. So, but make sure you do. And again, roasted garlic is got a deeper, more aroma, sweetness to it than just raw, pungent garlic to it. So I'm going to throw a couple of cloves in here with this. Oh. And then cilantro. And I know some people do not like cilantro. You are either in a camp of you can eat it or you can't. It either tastes like soap or it doesn't. In this instance, I am going to use it in here because it is completely traditional, and so I'm putting it in. But if you wanted, you could substitute parsley to be in here and use instead, but I'm going to use cilantro. And then I have some white onion that I just chopped and did. And the Mexicans use white onions. They do not use yellow onions, and you will rarely see them use a red onion. It's just what grows down there. It's what they're used to doing. A white onion has a good, strong flavor to it, and they like a lot of that in there. So they use a white onion. If you choose at home to use a yellow onion because it's what you got, or you want to put some green onions in because it's what you got, go right ahead. Don't not make it because you don't have a white onion. Use whatever you want. And then lime juice. This blender is the one that belongs here. So I'm never quite as used to it. And it's done. I mean, that's literally all it is. Those ingredients into a blender and blend them. At this point, you can take it, and if it were me, I would taste it. See if you needed to add more garlic, if you want to add more lime juice, oh yeah. If you want to add more cilantro, I would add more cilantro. But I won't do that for the people that, I really would add more cilantro. Now, at this point, this is phase 1 appropriate. Everything in here can be eaten phase 1. Use it on vegetables, use it on whatever, you could put it on top of any of your entrees if you wanted to jazz them up and give them a little more Mexican flavor, particularly the ones that you're taking some corn and black beans and, as your health educators tell you and throwing them in a crock pot or something, you could throw some of this in there with it and totally change it up so it's not tasting like the same thing all the time. But for a great meal prep idea, for those of you in phase 2, I know that your health educators tell you, first off, right at the beginning, as you get into phase 2 and you're trying to figure out, what can I do, what can I do? I remember one of the first things that Joya used to tell us was just take some chicken breasts and throw them in a crock pot and take a jar of salsa and throw it in there with it and turn the thing on and let it cook on low for 5 or 6 hours. And then when you take it out, shred it up, and here you've got salsa chicken. Change it up. Instead of just jarred salsa, take your salsa verde that you've got and that you've made and that will keep in your refrigerator for several weeks, and use that instead. And again, if you look on to the next pages in here, I have given you a recipe that is basically just that, salsa verde chicken here with chicken breast and homemade salsa verde. And you can use it as a marinade if you were, say, going to turn around and grill it, or if you want to stick it in the crock pot, there's instructions for that, with even a couple of added ingredients to even make it a little more, some cumin, some garlic powder, if you wanted to do with it. Or there's a stovetop, how to do it in a skillet, just cook it. So if you make some of that, there you go, you've got meal prep, okay? Then, what are you gonna do with it? Well, you can eat it straight out if you wanted to, but there is an entire page here of things that you can do with salsa verde chicken. Make a chicken skillet, chicken enchiladas, chicken tacos, chicken fajitas, chicken salad, chicken quesadilla, chicken burritos, a burrito bowl, chicken and rice, chicken pasta. So don't tell me that you don't have something different to eat with in your phase 2. Yes?
In 2 weeks, I used other variety of sources, right?
Yeah, there's a bunch of things here you'll be able to do. And this just, gives you a basic idea of how to use that to make any of those. There you go. Any questions? Salsa verde? Okay. Everybody's like, well, you'll get to eat it. Everybody's going to get to try on the end. All right, next recipe. I have made 3 different cottage cheese-based dressings. And we're just going to talk about them because I already have them made. Again, making it easy to get through this at the end. The first one is just what's called a simple cottage cheese dressing here. And it's kind of your base recipe. And I used low-fat cottage cheese. You could use no fat, you could use 1%. I used just Kroger low-fat cottage cheese when I made it. And then I used fat-free Greek yogurt with it. And then I did use some Parmesan cheese. So again, this is going to be phase 2. And then some white wine vinegar, Worcestershire sauce, garlic, salt, and pepper. And you literally just mix all those in a bowl together, or you can do them in a food processor and blend all that up together. So it's just a simple cottage cheese dressing. I did it in a food processor, and I ended up adding some skim milk to mine because I wanted to thin it more. You could have used 2% milk, 1% skim milk, buttermilk, water, broth. Use whatever you want. I tend to try in something like this to not use water because I want to give it flavor. I don't want to take flavor away. And oftentimes water just takes flavor away. So this is just a plain, simple cottage cheese dressing. Works as a dip or something different, again, to go on your salads that you've made yourself. And over tomatoes this time of year would be great. Instead of just the stuff you're buying at the store that's fat-free, whatever, but loaded with all kind of preservatives and the like in it. Somebody have a question?
What about long selling them on the chicken broth?
Yeah, absolutely. You could use that instead of the skim milk. That's what I said. You could use broth, water, any type of milk, buttermilk, whatever you wanted to do to thin it out to whatever consistency you want. If when you make it, you like the consistency of what it is, just keep it that way. That's up to you to decide. Then taking that exact same recipe, but taking out the white wine vinegar, and instead I added fresh lemon juice to it. Everything else stayed the same, and I added in some extra herbs. I put in some extra Parmesan cheese, some cracked green peppercorns, and green peppercorns are no different in a way than black peppercorn. Black peppercorn is just a ripe peppercorn. It's the most common peppercorn that you find. Fact is, it's the most traded spice in the world. It was used as money, commodities, for years between the Chinese and the Italians. When Marco Polo was bringing spices back and forth, people used to use pepper to buy things with. It was money. But it's a ripe peppercorn. A green peppercorn is just an unripe black peppercorn. So it doesn't have quite as pungent a flavor. It's not quite as strong as, and you can buy these in several places. I happen to just buy mine at Lots of Pasta because I was there buying my sherry vinegar. So I bought green peppercorns, and all I did with those to crack them, I just put them in a plastic bag and took out a bunch of aggression. Until I got them. I didn't want them completely down to just fine grind. I just wanted them to be cracked instead to go into this. So green peppercorns, and there's white pepper as well, which is where they've taken a black peppercorn and they've put it through a milling process and taken the outside skin off of it. So that's what leaves it white on the inside. And I did bring some white pepper. That it's the kind of thing you'll see people use, like in a dressing sometimes like this, or in mashed potatoes, or in cauliflower, where you don't want to add little black flecks. And you want to keep it white. White pepper will give you the flavor of pepper, not as strong as black pepper is, but won't change the color of something as much. So.
That was my question, right? It's not as strong.
Not as strong, because it's the inside of, it's almost like having the seed of what would have been the fruit coming out of it. But you're welcome again to come up at the end and try. Just put one, taste it and see it, by itself if you want. So the second one that I made then was the Parmesan peppercorn dressing. So it's it's got onion in it, some extra Parmesan. So it's that first basic one with using lemon juice instead of white wine vinegar, and added crushed peppercorns to it, and some fresh parsley. So you can see it kind of has a green tinge to it, let alone you can see the black flecks of the pepper in it.
Tracy, could you use nutritional yeast instead of the Parmesan?
Sure you could. It'll be different in nutritional value, and it'll be different slightly in taste, but it'll be similar too. And then the third one I did was just a creamy herb cottage cheese. Again, it was that first basic recipe, and the variation I did on it was I didn't put any Parmesan cheese in it, and I didn't use white wine vinegar, but I added in, now there's a change you need to make. I had a typo when I did this. Please change where it says 4 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar to 1 to 2. Please. If you put 4 tablespoons in there, it would be inedible. You'd be adding more cottage cheese and stuff to it to make up the difference. And somehow I just got it typed wrong when I did it. So 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. Dijon, I used the low-fat milk where it says apple juice, or you could use buttermilk. I just used some skim milk in there, tarragon, basil, thyme, salt, and pepper. And again, just put it in a food processor, whirred it up, and added a little more skim milk to it to just get it to the consistency I wanted it to be. So 3 different cottage cheese dressings, yes.
Back to the white wine vinegar.
Yeah.
Is there any special white wine vinegar?
No. I probably Cola Vita, I haven't, I just buy whatever for white wine vinegar to have in that instance. I mean, you can use, if you wanted to put champagne vinegar, that's a white wine, you could use it. You could use white balsamic, would be a white wine. White balsamic is always a little sweeter. Just like balsamic vinegar has a sweet note to it, so does white balsamic. So if you like a dressing or a flavor that's a little sweeter, go with the white balsamic. Other questions? And if you look at all these, 2 tablespoon servings of these, they're all really low in calories. And again, you've made them yourself. There's no preservatives. They keep for weeks, just like cottage cheese and Greek yogurt. By the time you added milk or vinegar to it or any kind of an acid, you're extending the life of it as well. Yeah, Mr. Chair.
I was just gonna say, so the base is the half cup of low-fat
Yes.
cottage cheese and the yogurt.
And the yogurt, absolutely. And then from there,
And
make
then it's-
variation changes on it just to give you some options. Yes,
What
ma'am.
about light sour cream? Do you have?
I used, well, no, I didn't. You could, again, all you're going to be able to do in that is change your, it'll change your nutritional value on it versus the Greek yogurt non-fat. And what I would do is if you didn't like Greek yogurt because it's so stiff, I would go, in the last class we talked about that you can buy out there yogurt that is not Greek yogurt, that is plain, no fat, and compared to Greek yogurt, it is a much, well, of course this one's got water on it, on top, but it is a creamier consistency than Greek yogurt is. Greek yogurt's stiffer. Greek yogurt tends to have more protein in it as well. It's higher protein content, but you can buy, Walmart carries a great value of just plain non-fat yogurt that you could use in there instead. That'll be creamier, not as stiff. You know, it just change your nutritional value, but sure, you can change it however you like. Cleaning up my mess. The next one. This is the only recipe that I'm going to tell you I would consider the way I have it here for you today to possibly be a fail. A fail. It's a fail. And it's the way I did it. The recipe itself should be good, and I didn't do something right, and it is way overly garlic. Way. First of all, chimichurri sauce is an Argentinian sauce, and they typically use it over red meat. And it is typically made from olive oil, parsley, olive oil, garlic, olive oil, red onion, olive oil, red wine vinegar, or could be white wine vinegar. But it is an olive oil-based product. And you would take your parsley, some places want to add cilantro into it. And this recipe says you can use half and half. I use straight out parsley in this. I did not use any cilantro in it. And this particular recipe also called for lime juice and lime zest. Well, I wasn't trying to get Mexican with it, that kind of Latin American. I was trying to stay in a different part of South America. So I used red wine vinegar, which is the traditional. And then I had onion and garlic in it. I don't know what I did. Somehow I must have had my mind going in roasting tomatillos and something else going on, and I put too much garlic in this. And you're welcome to try it, but it is really garlic. But anyway, typically, again, they would put it over meat, red meat, but it works great over fish, chicken, vegetables. And what I used instead of the oil here was the aquafaba again. And it worked as a great base for this. Now, the recipe, when you do, if you follow this recipe, first of all, go very light on the garlic. And then they have you taking, and you're doing it in a food processor, and All you're doing is taking the garlic and well, not the onion, but it was the garlic and the parsley and oregano. I put just a 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes in it, and I doubled the recipe. So I didn't double the red pepper flakes. I didn't want to blow anybody out with it. And then salt and pepper. And they had you putting, and normally you would make that, do all those things together in a food processor, take them out, and then you would just add your oil and mix it with a spoon. They had you adding your aquafaba, that chickpea brine, into there, and so when it whirred up in the food processor, it got really kind of foamy, and I thought, well, that's kind of weird looking. So if I was going to do it again, I would follow the traditional way and just add my chickpea brine in and just stir it into it like you would have done the oil. But they also want you to make this several hours in advance so that the flavor has time to develop on it. And by the time, when I made this yesterday and it came up this morning, that foaminess had gone away. So depending on when you plan to make it and use it, you can stick it in and whir it all up in the food processor or just stir it in, and I don't think it'll make much of a difference.
Tracy,
Uh-huh.
I'm in phase 2, and I'm noticing that you said it's south. I can come in class and get on the scale, jump and just tell me down, tell me from the south.
Yeah. Well, leave the salt out. The recipe, I mean, you can make those adjustments yourself. You can either choose to use that in there or not. It's there, but skip it. Just leave it out. If you don't like it, just leave it out.
I love it.
Some people are more salt sensitive than others. Some people can get away with a little bit in things. Some people can't. And I know Jill can't at all. And so it just leave it out or swap it out and use them as a dash that you would like. Yes?
Can that be used as a marinade or
Absolutely.
something?
You can marinate with it. Now, I would be careful if you were going to put it on the grill because of the fresh herbs, the parsley and stuff. If you were going to marinate in it, I would make sure to really shake it off before I would put it on a grill for fear of burning, or unless you were going to use indirect heat and let it be cooking that way. If you're going to use a direct flame on it, you might burn that outside if you're not careful.
So baking it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. You could bake with it. And again, pork tenderloin, chicken, shrimp. And again, you guys are welcome to, but it has got a lot of garlic. I even tried it this morning again, and I think I still have the taste of it in my mouth. And I did it before I brushed my teeth. So, I mean, I think this is a great recipe, and chimichurri is a great sauce. I don't know what. But anyway, yes, ma'am.
Did you say, excuse me, that you used red wine vinegar?
I used the red wine vinegar because at the bottom, yeah, I know it says here lime juice, but at the bottom, feel free to substitute red wine or white wine vinegar for the lime juice. And I used red wine vinegar instead of, because it's a more traditional in your chimichurri. But again, making this, I mean, it's 8 calories, and there's nothing to it for it. And again, even looking at the sodium content, it's only 29 milligrams for 2 tablespoons, so it's not way out there compared to some other things. Questions, anybody?
Which one's more traditional, orange?
No, red wine vinegar. Red wine vinegar is more traditional and straight up using parsley. The addition of using cilantro or lime juice instead of Argentina, it's where the people in Central America have absconded with the recipe, the concept of it, and have changed it into more of their style, what they're doing with it. And again, this is a phase 1 appropriate recipe. Everything in it fits phase 1. Any other questions? Yes?
You like phase 1, I'm in phase 2.
Well, the fact is, anything that's in phase 1 can be used in phase 2. I just was trying to make sure that the phase 1 people have things they can do. I mean, I would think that would be the benefit, a bonus, yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
When you use your chickpea broth, do you have any recipes on how to use the chickpeas that are left
Yeah, hummus.
besides hummus?
Besides hummus. Well, of course, you know, it can go in a salad. It's a great protein for anybody that's on a plant-based, more plant-based diet. It's just a straight-up protein in a salad or over the top of a hummus for sure. I have been playing around with, I told Joya, I've been playing around with a sauce that would have it in it, but I didn't like it well enough before this class to use it yet. But I'm working on a gravy with it, but I just haven't got it enough to be able to bring to do. I was using the chickpeas and nutritional yeast and playing around with all this stuff, and it wasn't right yet. So if y'all don't get it. Huh?
You can heat them up and eat them.
Oh yeah, you can roast them and just eat them. That's it, yeah. You can just put them on a sheet pan, 450, 425 oven for 25, 30 minutes until they get nice and crispy. Shake the pan a couple times. And the problem with that is those, be careful because they're like eating peanuts. They're addictive. But you can use them for some crunch over the top of a salad or something where you've been missing, or over even crunch on top of a soup where you're missing tortilla strips or something like that, where you can put them on there and you can season them. You know, put some either chili powder on them or maybe Greek seasoning or some cumin or something like that, whatever spices you like when you're roasting them. And then again, you use them as a topping where you can monitor the amount you're getting versus leaving them in a bowl sitting to the side. So yeah. Anybody else? Okay, next one. I have a honey mustard, no honey dressing that I did. And this really is literally, I mean, it's not quite the right color here, but it was Dijon mustard. I used sugar-free maple syrup, and I used the creamy yogurt in this, not Greek yogurt, and I didn't go with mayonnaise in it. I did give you, though, in the nutritional here, the difference in calorie bases and, you know, fat and sodium and anything else, depending on which one that you used. But Dijon mustard, sugar-free maple syrup, and just plain non-fat yogurt. And that really is it. In a bowl with a whisk and mixed it up. Simple.
Is that the yogurt one recipe?
I did, no, I think I did, wait a minute, I can tell you. When I did it, when I put it together. 2 times. That's a double recipe when I made it. I was trying to remember. It's hard to remember. I did so many on what but this was 2 times. So.
Tracy, how long, once you make 2 times, how long will that last in your refrigerator?
Several weeks. Yeah, I mean, based on whatever your date on your yogurt was. Dijon mustard isn't going bad anytime soon, and neither is maple syrup. So that would keep for several weeks.
And that's true for
Just everything, yes. I don't have anything that's here other than probably the fresh tomato sauce that is going to go on you in a shorter period of time. And that's just going to go because the tomatoes, you know, by the time they sit. Yeah, Mr.
Could you use some of that and mix it with balsamic vinegar to turn it into a balsamic dressing?
Yes, you could. And it also is a fairly strong dressing here. So you could also, if you read down at the bottom down here, if you want it thinner, you could add some water or lemon juice or broth to it. You could add some skim milk to it if you wanted to thin it out. When you come up here and taste it, I mean, I think it's great that it is a fairly strong-ish dressing. And if you don't like it quite as sweet, just use, when you taste this one, just use less of the sugar-free maple syrup. Play with it for yourself. You have a question? Okay, no.
Thank you about my dressing. I think I'd give that a try.
Well, exactly, you know, it's just something, I got real tired real fast of Trader Joe's balsamic vinaigrette. And they're, you know, fat-free Asian ginger vinaigrette. And those ones from Walden were never my favorite. I know some people love them, and that's great. I'm not trying to discount that for anybody. They just weren't my favorite. So I was trying to come up with stuff that didn't have as much sodium, that were fresher, that didn't have the extra sugar added to them, or whatever it was that they were using in them. So no preservatives. Okay, next one. I worked on this for a long time to come up with this recipe. I have worked on this one for a while, and it is a teriyaki. And I can honestly tell you that teriyaki sauce is typically made from sugar, more sugar, soy sauce, so lots and lots of salt. It's usually got flour in it, or they're using soy sauce that isn't gluten-free or any of that. So it tends to be just high in calorie, high in sodium, and I wanted one that was more natural, that had no refined sugar in it, was gluten-free, was no oil in it, nothing like that, and I've worked on this for a while. And so what I came up with was using, and this is phase 1 appropriate, I ran it, made sure with Joya and with Chuck, I used apple juice in this with coconut aminos. Now, we've talked about coconut aminos in here before, in other ones. It is a substitute for soy sauce. That is, if somebody is allergic to soy and can't use soy, but it's from the sap of the coconut tree. And it is a little sweeter than soy sauce is, but it is gluten-free, it is vegetarian or vegan. It has way less sodium, but it's a substitute for soy. Now, if you can't eat coconut or you don't like this particular product, you could certainly swap it out in this and use low sodium soy sauce. If you have a problem with gluten or any of that, you could swap it and use it for low sodium tamari, which is gluten-free soy sauce. So you could use whatever it is that you want to do this with. So anyway, I used apple juice and coconut aminos for this. And then in here I have some arrowroot that I'm using. You could use cornstarch. I try, if possible, to use arrowroot only because cornstarch bothers people some. It is a grain. It does have more calories than arrowroot is. So I'm literally here, took the mixture that I had first was the liquid. It was the apple juice, the coconut aminos. I did the 1 tablespoon of unseasoned rice vinegar and 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. You could do this with straight up apple cider vinegar. You could do it with straight up unseasoned rice vinegar. At the store, you can buy rice vinegar. Make sure that you buy the unseasoned when you're at the store. It comes both ways. Seasoned means it's got salt and sugar added to it. The unseasoned doesn't have salt and sugar in it. You get to control what you want to be in there. So again, this is the apple juice, coconut aminos, 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar, 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and then some arrowroot, and then I have finely grated ginger, fresh ginger. And I literally, when I do it, you can use a spoon, you can use a knife. I always tell people, don't use a peeler when you're peeling your ginger because it goes too deep into, and you lose a lot of product. Just use like a spoon or something, and you just literally can rub it against the edge of the ginger where the skin is, and it just pulls the skin right off on the outside of it. You can get with your spoon into some of those little cracks and crevices that you see on a piece of ginger. And the other thing is, when you see ginger in the store, you want it to not be all wrinkly. If it is all wrinkled up and shriveled up, it's old. You want a piece that is smooth in the skin, it looks like, and you don't have to buy the whole piece. That whole finger's worth of it, just tear off the part you want. That's how it's sold, what it's done. So you can just buy small pieces of it. So once you've got the skin off of it, then I take a grater and I just literally grate it. And you end up with grated ginger. If my pieces seem too big, I can use a smaller one or a smaller whole grater, or just take that and run a knife through it real quick and cut my pieces up. The other thing that's great with ginger is that you can freeze it. Wrap it in plastic real well, throw it in the freezer. So it's not something that just has to stay in your refrigerator when you use it one time or something, and then have it wrinkle up and go bad on it, get old. So again, all I did here was take everything and put it in a pot. And it's really good. And bring it up to a boil here, and it's done. I mean, it thickened up with the cornstarch in here. Now, once you've done this, taste it. Take a spoon, put it in there, taste it. If you want it a little sweeter, add 1 packet or 2 of Splenda to it to get it to the flavor you want it to be. And just start with 1 packet, and you can do that off the stove when it's sitting there cooling and the like. And when you just taste it, and if 1 packet sweetens it to where you want it, great. If you need to add 2, that's whatever works for you. And it's done.
Tracy, what is arrowroot? I'm not familiar with that.
Arrowroot it's literally a plant that grows, and it
Usually sell it next to cornstarch.
yeah, with cornstarch, or this is Bob's Red Mill, so I mean, I buy it in the organic section. It's not a grain. Cornstarch is coming from corn, and arrowroot is literally its own plant, and it's a great thickener. It works as a thickener. It's a flour, a thickener. I find it work, first of all, compared to cornstarch. Cornstarch will change the color of something when you put it in, make a slurry with it, adding it to water or broth or something, you add it in, and it also has a flavor. So you have to cook that cornstarch flavor out of something, like in a gravy when you're thickening with it for several minutes to cook that out. Arrowroot doesn't have that. It doesn't have that extra added flavor, so it can go straight into things and use. It also doesn't change the color of something and lighten it up. What you have to be careful with, though, with arrowroot is that it does not freeze well. Or it doesn't freeze well, and it doesn't necessarily reheat real well. It can break on you sometimes, and what I mean by that is lose its thickening power. And all of a sudden, something you've made is now kind of back to being thin again. So it's just when you're swapping something out and using it for something. But teriyaki sauce here, you know, it can be on. You can use it as a marinade. You can use it as a glaze on chicken or pork tenderloin. You can use it to dip stuff in. Yes, ma'am.
So maybe I'm thinking too, where your cornstarch, since it comes from the grain. So it doesn't count as grain phase 2?
No,
Okay.
it does not. It doesn't count as a grain, but some people react differently to grains than other people do. So I'm just putting that out there, that some people don't do well with grains, and they can't have, they have to have grain-free diets. So if that is the case, you would probably know that yourself, and you would already be cooking with arrowroot or something else as a thickener for yourself.
I was just wondering about the coconut aminos.
Yep.
Where do you buy that?
You can buy them at, again, anywhere. Trader Joe's has their own version of it. Whole Foods, this particular brand, Coconut Secret, is my favorite. We had a whole thing, we talked about these the last time, because every brand has its own, might be a few calories more or a few grams of, or milligrams of sodium higher or lower. But Trader Joe's has a version, Kroger has a version. Make sure that if you buy the brand called Bragg's, which is what those like flakes are there, Bragg's makes something called liquid aminos, which is not the same thing as coconut aminos. So make sure that you don't do, because the liquid aminos is straight out soy, and it is a completely different, darker, harder, deeper flavor than coconut aminos is, and has way more sodium. So just check the label if it's Bragg's is the one that you find. But Whole Foods has it, Lucky's had it, Fresh Thyme carried this one until they closed.
What's the shelf life on those bottles once you open them?
These,
Like the aminos or
a
the soy?
year better, just like soy sauce.
They can be kept in a non-refrigerated?
Absolutely, non-refrigerated. Just keep them on the shelf.
How do you know at any point in time if you've kept them too long? Does it turn?
They'll start to separate. They will start to get, at the bottom of it will have must and stuff. And what I mean by that is dregs start to be in the bottom of it. It just won't taste as fresh. It's not going to go sour per se. It just won't taste or smell as fresh. Kind of like when vinegar goes bad and it gets too vinegary.
So in phase one, can you use would it be worth it to buy a whole bottle of coconut amino?
Yes, because this is in the, I go through bottles of this. It is, I use it in, it's called Coconut Secret Coconut Aminos. And it was the original, people to come out with it. This is the main ingredient in that Asian sauce recipe of mine that is, yeah, peanut that I use the PB2 powder in with this. I use it on anything where I want it to be soy sauce. So if I'm trying to make something, even if it's the savory chicken dish and I want it to have an Asian flavor, because I'm missing having, and I'm stir fried with a bunch of vegetables, I use this instead of where I would have labeled on soy, because Chinese food is just a reason to eat soy sauce. So this now becomes anything that I use it for instead of.
Where do you find that in the grocery?
It's typically with the other Asian ingredients, or it would be where you find the soy sauces and things that might be in a section where, like barbecues and Worcestershire, where the kind of condiment section would be.
After your last talk, I went to Trader Joe's and they had a whole end cap display.
Of it, yeah. And they sell their version of nutritional yeast as well in a bag, so you can buy it at Trader Joe's. And I have used both of their products on that. I've tried them both, it works. Yeah, Mike.
You said vinegar go bad.
Vinegar can get too, first of all, it gets too dark, like white vinegar. All of a sudden, it'll take on this really deep golden color if it's been in there too long. And it's just not as fresh and clean as it was to start with. Red wine vinegar can start to get all that yuck sitting in the bottom of it that you can see. So it's just not as fresh and nice as it was. Not that it is bad, it's just not going to be optimum flavor as it was when you opened it up. All right, ready? Next one. I have a, let's see here. I have two different sesame ginger dressing kind of here for you. One that would be reminiscent if you've been to an Asian restaurant and on that kind of orangey looking dressing that they give you, that they serve on their little salad or whatever. I have a version of that here. And just so you know, this recipe is not mine. I made changes to it. But it's when that WFPB, that stands for Whole Food Plant-Based. And there's an entire diet of whole food plant-based a lifestyle of people out there that are living that. No oil, all plant-based, all vegetarian, but vegan in what they're doing. And it's, you know, this Dr. Esselstyn and what, I know that Joy has been eating quite a bit of that. There's no dairy. And so it's supposedly very healthy. But I find that it also has great recipes that work for us in a phase 2 box that you can then put on whatever meat or vegetable product you want. So this starts with celery, carrot, and onion. Then I have a teaspoon of grated ginger in here, and I'm starting with a teaspoon of it. If you want more, I have extra here, but ginger again can be very strong in flavor, so I'm just starting with a teaspoon. Then I have a mixture here of what the liquids were. Lemon juice, the maple syrup, I used coconut aminos, unseasoned rice wine vinegar, and then I used 2 tablespoons of almond milk in here with this. And as well, 1 tablespoon of what is called miso. And let me explain miso. Asian ingredient, it is fermented soybeans. And the Asians use it a ton. Miso dressings, miso soup. They use it to flavor all kind of different things with. There are really dark red misos that are out there that are very, very salty in content, very, very rich and heavy in flavor. This is what they call a white miso. So it's a very light colored miso paste here. Keeps forever in the refrigerator. When I mean forever, this would keep for like a year, 2 years in your refrigerator with no problem. You could completely leave it out of this recipe. It is giving a balance of what the Asians would call umami, which is the 5th taste sense that has now been found to be in your mouth versus just salty, sweet, sour, and bitter, which is what we forever knew to be the 4 senses that you could taste in your mouth. The Asians realized that there's one that's called savory. It's a savoriness, and they call it umami. And you find that in things like soybeans, mushrooms, steak. It's this savory feeling that comes in. And so it does tend to be, it adds some salt to this, but you can see the salt content in here is not high at all. But if you're worried about it, you can leave it out, or if you can't find it, I will say my Kroger doesn't carry it, Rainbow Blossom does, Whole Foods does, Lucky's does, Fresh Thyme did. So some of those more specialty markets, I didn't look at Meijer, I don't know, and I didn't look at Walmart to see if they do. But this is the mellow white miso that I use, and again, it can hold forever.
Tracy, what did you say that was made from though? I missed
Fermented soybeans. So if you've got an issue with soy, you can just leave it out. You don't have to use it at all. And some people do have soy issues. And then what I did was I also have toasted sesame seeds in this. So instead of using oil, which usually you would use sesame oil in a dressing type thing to get the flavor, I literally took just white sesame seeds, a dry pan on the stove. I didn't want to do it here just because I didn't have the right space. Dry pan, put your sesame seeds in there and don't walk away. Turn it on to medium high, don't walk away, and you want to move them around in there because you don't want them to burn. But when they go from being white but to taking on that kind of light toasty brown to them, they're ready. And you can do that with pine nuts, you can do it with almonds, you can do it with slivered almond, any kind of nut, because they all have oil inside them. So if you start with a dry pan, the oil's going to start to heat up on the outside of the seed or the nut, and it will then start to brown and toast. But you got to watch it. And then one of the other things you really need to have kind of ready when you're done is have a space, whether it's with a sheet pan or an open space on your counter or something. When you take this off, get those seeds out of that hot pan, because if you leave them, just take it off and let them sit, they're going to sit there and burn in that hot pan. So immediately, go spread them out on something that's cool, so they'll start to cool down for you. And it only takes a couple minutes. And you can toast sesame seeds and keep them in a container, and they'll keep for several months and not go rancid or bad on you. So if you're going to do some, don't just necessarily do the amount you need for a particular recipe. Go ahead and have them, because they're great to sprinkle on things. Give you a little crunch without too much extra calorie and fat. And then this recipe called for 2 to 4 tablespoons of water. And I would start, and did start when I played with all this, with 2 tablespoons to thin it out. If you need more, you can always add more. Yes, and this is a fairly thin, but I started with 2, and just check it and see. I got a piece of carrot here. It's not much. Come on. And here you have a carrot, ginger, sesame dressing. But again, if you could use it on a salad, but you could also use it over vegetables, over any of your broccoli, cauliflower, or asparagus, or snap peas, or over fish, over chicken, over pork tenderloin, just something else, a different sauce to give you a different flavor. And y'all are going to like that. That is really, really good. And then I did make, just so that you had it here as a comparison, in case somebody said, well, geez, I didn't like that one so well when I tasted it. I also made what would be, to many people's mind, a more traditional sesame ginger dressing here, which is the next recipe. And it is was coconut aminos, rice vinegar. It does have some toasted sesame oil in it. Some Splenda garlic, ginger. I used the juice from a can of mandarin oranges, to give it some flavor, and then the toasted sesame seeds. And if you make that dressing, there's also a suggestion there for a chopped Asian salad that would use those other mandarin oranges in it, so that once you've got those open, you go, what do I do with them now? Make a salad. All right. Question? Yes.
Tracy, on the toasted sesame oil,
Yes.
so is that doing something comparable where you have a hot pan, you just put a little,
Yes,
or
but
is it, or is it already toasted?
it's already toasted. You buy it toasted. Yep, you buy it toasted in the store. If the difference between sesame oils, there's some that you can buy that's light in color and some that's dark. And that's already toasted here. And in this instance, it's what I call a finishing oil. If you're going to do it in a pan, don't heat it and try and cook stuff in it, because it can burn. It has a fairly high smoke point, but it can burn. I like to finish with it on something. In this instance, it was on a dressing, and it just got added into it.
Thank you.
And again, because of the oil in there, that would be a phase 2 recipe. Questions? Okay, next one. I make a piccata sauce that is and I've started making this back in phase 1 because I was looking for, again, something flavor-wise. I like lemon too much, but I was tired of just putting lemon on stuff. So what I have here is chicken broth, low sodium chicken broth, and then I have cornstarch, 3 teaspoons of cornstarch here.
Did you use arrowroot?
You could use arrowroot in this, but I use the cornstarch in this one, and I have a reason for it. This sauce freezes beautifully. You can make it and then package it up in like 1 cup portions in Ziploc bags and stick it in your freezer. So then you have to just pull it out, and when you pull it out and go to reheat it, it will look like it has separated some, but just take a whisk to it as it's heating and it comes right back together. And it freezes really, really well.
Tracy, when you're reheating some of these sauces that you get
Uh-huh.
from the refrigerator, is the best way to reheat in a saucepan as opposed to a microwave, or is there a difference?
Yes, there's a difference. If I'm trying to do it and not dirty anything up, I do it in the microwave. I do it if you do it on the stove, you always have evaporation, typically, that's going to occur with something. And it's harder, I think, to control, whereas like if I'm heating up meats or vegetables or things like that, I always do it in the microwave because I can do it on really low power. I can keep it covered. I can keep it moist. I have it not dry out as much as it might if I were trying to do it on the stovetop, or I use a double boiler. So again, you're not having direct heat hit it, and again, just dry it out. So this literally is, I combined the broth and the cornstarch together, put it in here to dissolve. I already have mixed up in here dry white wine, some capers and some lemon juice. And I say on there capers, whatever amount you like. If you like capers, which I do, I put a bunch of them in. If you don't like as many capers, just use a tablespoon of them. And I always make what's 4 times the sauce recipe. That's why it's on here like that. Because 1 time it doesn't make enough. And I like to always have extra. So you literally just put this in a pan, and I'm actually going to, while it's cooking here, I'm going to go on and show you the next one while this is doing its thing and not just stand here and chit-chat. Other than I will tell you at the end, should you choose, it is always lovely with a little butter added in. at the end. It enriches it beautifully. You can do without. It has cornstarch in here. It will thicken. It'll give you that. But I do show you in here, if you use the little tiny bit of butter that 4 times the recipe would be, it's 19 calories for 2 tablespoons. If you don't use the butter, it's 10 calories for 2 tablespoons. So you decide what you like. And Chuck's not standing here, but he will see it, I know. But anyway, so you can choose to or not. I'm just letting you know.
Can I ask you a question about
Yes.
the butter?
I use unsalted butter, always, always, always.
That answered my question, because the sodium level was the same
Yeah,
for both.
yeah, unsalted butter. I don't want somebody else to salt my stuff for me. I want to control it myself. Just like having unseasoned rice vinegar. I want to control it. If I'm going to add it in, I add it in. So, as I say, this has just got to cook enough to get hot enough for it to thicken with the cornstarch. And it's going to take a couple of minutes for that to occur. So I'll have to watch it. Somebody please save me. Look back there in a minute.
Tracy, is ricotta sauce the sauce that you're going to apply to your chicken or shrimp or fish after you cooked it on the grill?
After you've cooked it, after you've done it, I put that in there. Unless, say, if you're pan sauteing maybe, some chicken breasts or pan sauteing some shrimp or something, and you want to throw it in at the last minute and saute it with them, you absolutely could do that with it, with no problem. But again, this is just a sauce that works really, really well. And the fact that it freezes is great for it. The last one per se, depending on time, I may do one more. I actually have one bonus. You know, I always have a bonus recipe. Yes, ma'am. No, that was just straight out chicken broth.
Have you tried that? I wonder.
The better than bouillon.
Well, no, it's, I can't remember the brand, but it's like so many different things.
I'm not sure. Oh no, I have not used that. I either use straight out just chicken broth.
You can keep it on the shelf.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I either use something like this. I mean, it's not always, do I use Trader Joe's organic? I just use whatever I happen to have. And we'll buy, you know, low sodium. But I also have been known to use the better than bouillon low sodium, the paste as well.
this is a liquid, but it's thick.
All right. I have a lemon dill sauce here. And this literally was just really easy. It's reduced fat sour cream. I used light sour cream here. You could make it even less calories than what it is if you wanted to use no fat sour cream in here, or you know, something else. Now, oh, I take that back. I use zero Greek yogurt when I make this. You could use light sour cream if you want, but what you'll see here, this original recipe came from Eating Well magazine, and I adjusted it. The original recipe where they used reduced fat sour cream and mayonnaise in it, it was 92 calories for what they called 2.5 tablespoons. I, of course, dropped it down to 2 tablespoons, and by using fat-free Greek yogurt, I used Hellmann's Light mayonnaise. I really did use Hellmann's Light in this. I did not use the dill pickle. There's no dill pickle. You could, but again, that would increase your sodium content. But I did not. You could use capers in this if you wanted to. If you didn't want dill pickle, you could add some capers into it. I didn't. I just didn't put them in here. I did use fresh dill, lemon juice, and a little salt and pepper, and it is a lovely lemon dill sauce. It works great. I have eaten whole artichokes with this, where you dip the leaf into the bottom of them and pull them through your teeth and eat that. It's great over broccoli, cauliflower, fish, chicken. It's a great dip for vegetables to take somewhere. And as you can see here, for 2 tablespoons, 31 calories. So not bad at all, out of what was the original 92. So, now, I think I have time here for a bonus recipe that you all don't have, but you will have. I wasn't sure if I was going to have time. So I have done a mushroom sauce for you. And all this is here is onions and mushrooms, and it's going to depend on how quickly I can get them to saute, and they may not saute as quickly as I want them to, and then I'll go ahead and add the base into them anyway, and we'll go from there. But, I mean, this is a, yes ma'am?
I just have a general question.
Yes.
How long does it take you to go grocery shopping? You mentioned about 5 stores.
I shop at, I have stores every week. Every Tuesday, I'm here in class on Tuesdays. I go to Trader Joe's when I leave here. It's close by. I shop at Kroger 3 to 4 days a week. I'm in Kroger shopping for just regular stuff. I go to Aldi once a week, typically on Wednesdays, because that's the day, Wednesday or Thursday, that's the day that all their special stuff comes into the special aisle, where I bought my blender for $79 instead of $500 for a Vitamix, where you can buy all kind of, the little blender over here, I think it was $19.99 instead of a Cuisinart being whatever it is. I buy all kind of stuff at Aldi, and as I say, that stuff comes in on Wednesdays. If you happen to get their circular or get it sent to you at home on your computer, the stuff actually, they start putting it on the shelves often Tuesday afternoon. So if it is something that you think might be a big sellout item, go Tuesday afternoon and it'll already be on the shelf. I mean, I buy all kinds of stuff besides food at Aldi. They really do have their Ambiano products, stuff, yeah.
Aren't you a professional chef? So
Yeah, oh well, yeah.
shopping for food is part of it.
Well, but I don't do that anymore for a living anymore. I have retired out of that on a full-time basis. That is a job for younger people than me. It is. I mean, 70 and 80-hour weeks standing over a hot stove. That is, I'm too old for that now. But anyway, so I'm sauteing, just as you saw, basically dry sauteing, Pam or Pam spray, whatever you want. Use a non-stick pan, that'll help you out too. And this is just onions and mushrooms I'm sauteing here. I think I have 10 copies of this right now. They can run more, because I didn't know, first of all, I didn't know if I'd get to it. And, but, while these are doing their little bit here, yes, that was 8 ounces, you know, half a pound, 8 ounces. Half an onion.
White onion?
I used a yellow onion, straight out yellow onion. And again, this says 1 medium, but I used a half of one. It's kind of up to you. I felt like I had a fairly big onion. It was a great big Vidalia onion. So I just used half of it. But then I took, you want, yep, here you go. Bonus. 2 cups of low sodium chicken broth. It says water, but I use chicken broth in mine. If you wanted this to stay vegetarian, use vegetable stock, beef stock, whatever you want in it. Then cornstarch, onion powder, garlic powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I used coconut aminos in this, which makes it a little bit sweeter. If when you taste this on the back end, if it's too sweet, go with the tamari, the low sodium tamari for gluten-free, and then some dried thyme. And I'm literally going to whir it up. Just to make it do, you know, and I mean, whatever little blender, whatever you've got, instead of doing all that kind of stuff, I mean, this is easy. I mean, it literally is easy. So I've got the mushrooms, the onion in here. Pour it in. And it'll thicken. And you now have a mushroom gravy that can go over your fake meatloaf, over your Thanksgiving turkey, over a baked potato, over your chicken that you're tired of eating the same way. It's just a mushroom gravy that you would have ever needed a gravy for. If you don't, now I'll tell you this too. You can leave the mushrooms and leave the onion out of it and just heat the base. And you have a gravy then that is just a straight gravy with no mushroom added to it. Yeah.
Tell us the base again.
Well, you're going to get there making copies of the recipe for you right now. I use chicken stock. Do what? Oh, in this one, I use cornstarch in this. I did because if you wanted to reheat it, I was worried about the arrowroot and settling on me and thinning it out and not doing. So I did use cornstarch in this.
What kind of mushrooms?
I used cremini, but you could use white mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, a blend of mushrooms, whatever you like. I happen to like cremini because I just think they have more flavor to them than straight out white button mushroom. So, but that's just a personal, that doesn't mean it's right. And that's really it. That's what we've got today.
Oh, I was just thinking that whole thing, or the mushrooms could go into a food processor to puree and make it a soup.
Absolutely. You could turn that, yeah, you could.
Yeah. All right, you guys.
So we don't have any signs per se out here this time on these, and we did the last time, and I don't have any signs, but there are spoons over here to come through to be able to taste all of the stuff.
Well, you guys, before we get to the taste testing portion, which is exciting, I know I'm excited, let's go ahead and give Traci one more hand. Thank you so much. Now we'll have to run out and all go to the grocery, you know, right now and get all the stuff to prepare. But just thank you so much again for doing this. So exciting. And you guys go out there, make sure you're adding some variety to your meals. And thanks for being here today, you guys. Thank you. Have a great one. Yeah. Traci.
We ran out of memory.
Oh no.
I don't know what time though.
Oh, I don't know. I checked it recently.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh no, we didn't.
Yep.